Our most popular episode to date is our Business Model Canvas podcast. We briefly covered each of the 9 building blocks of the Business Model Canvas in that podcast. In response to many requests from our audience, we are providing 9 podcast episodes addressing each building block separately in greater depth. The Business Model Canvas, developed by Alexander Osterwalder, is a template often used to develop ideas and a monetization strategy for a startup venture. This episode is the 3rd of 9 and will cover key resources.
Our Favorite Tools for Entrepreneurs podcast addresses tools and concepts that are useful for the launch and growth of entrepreneurial ventures. Your 2 hosts will be Professor Gary Palin and serial entrepreneur Ryan Budden.
Well, good afternoon, Ryan. How are you doing today?
Fantastically. What about you?
Another good day. Things are going well.
Beautiful.
Ryan, today I would like to talk about the key resources component of a business model canvas. And that refers to important assets, capabilities, and resources that a company needs to create value for its customers and generate revenue. Examples of key resources, they could be physical, financial, intellectual, human resources, are some of the typical assets that you look at with key resources. What's your experience with developing the key resources component of a business model canvas?
We're probably going to say this for each one of the squares, but it's really important. For me, this comes down to people and money. Who are the essential people that you need on your team to make something happen? And how much money is that going to require? And if you can get your mind around those 2 things and really build that out on this resources section, I think that's the backbone for the rest of this. The 3rd that I'll throw in there is intellectual property. The next step on resources is just defining what that is so you're properly securing it, or at least having an awareness around what it is and where it is.
On an overview perspective, key resources is critical to gain a competitive advantage and to create a unique value for your customers.
Yeah. And oftentimes you see that in the people. So what skill sets do your internal team have, or what do you have to go and then kick it back to the partnerships to get a key resource as a partnership if you can't get it internally?
Yeah, that's a simple resource-based analysis. What I always do with a business to see what resources I have in-house and what resources I need externally.
Mm-hmm. And as a startup, oftentimes this could be a prioritization list for you. What are these key resources that you want to bring in-house that you might not financially be able to, relationship-wise, you might not be able to, you just don't know the right person. So what's in your key partners that you want to very quickly bring in-house and create it as a key resource?
And not to go down this rabbit hole, but where I see people will make errors with starting a business, and we've talked about this, is they will start a business with their friend and the skill sets are often the same and redundant. So why have that other person? So when you're building a team, you want diverse skills from multiple people.
Mm-hmm. My favorite way of phrasing it is zone of genius. Where does everybody's zone of genius lie, and where do they overlap with each other?
Other resources that are looked at are what physical resources that you need. Hopefully they're minimal up front. But if you are in manufacturing, can you lease versus purchasing the equipment? You may want to outsource at the beginning, have proof of concept, and then start doing things in-house.
Yeah. That all is part of the decision of key resources, right? Because the core of that being resource, how much does it cost to bring it in-house? How much is it going to cost to have a third party do it? How much is it going to cost to do a lease model, so semi in-house? That's part of this. What does the financial decision-making process look like? Defining where you're going to place this on the business model canvas and how you're going to treat it once you've started the business and are operating.
And what resources are key when you're bringing it in-house? How will that impact my cash flow? It always comes back to cash flow.
Yeah.
And even though it might not be cost effective, the cost per month might be lower, so I can keep my break even lower as I'm proving concept and moving forward. And then I can start bringing things in-house is how I look at the physical resources.
Yep. Oftentimes when I'm walking through the business model canvas, this is also where investors come up. So are you getting an investment, so a large chunk of money that then you can build certain things up? Or are you bootstrapping? Or are you just simply selling future contracts? What does that look like? And how is that going to inform your ability to do all these other squares?
Yeah, those financial resources are make or break of the business.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And you mentioned intellectual property. That's not just with technology, trademarks, copyrights. Those are other important forms of intellectual property.
And we've actually done a whole podcast on intellectual property. So you can take a deep dive by going and listening to the different facets of it and making sure you know where it is and what it is and how you're owning and possessing it.
Now, another key resource that is very often overlooked is brand and reputation of the venture.
Goodwill.
Yes, and that's extremely important, especially as you're starting up. And you don't want to cut corners that will negatively impact your reputation because, again, that's very difficult to recoup. It's very difficult to develop an excellent reputation very fast to ruin your reputation.
Yeah. Anyone that's ever been in business knows that reviews skew negatively. Understanding that as you go forwards and how that's going to affect your customer relationship is huge.
On an overarching perspective, looking at key resources, the focus will be what is critical to be able to deliver value to my customers and generate revenue while not overextending your financial resources.
There we go. A mock financial statement would work here as well. You're looking at how you can place these key resources on that financial statement to see if it makes sense, just as a common sense check.
Before we wrap up, any areas you want to touch with key resources?
I think we've covered it. Just make sure you're accounting for the money, the people, and the intellectual property.
Sounds like a game plan again.
Talk to you soon.
Thanks, Ryan.
Thanks for listening to our Favorite Tools for Entrepreneurs podcast. As always, you can head over to ProfSpirit.com to check out more resources and courses designed for you, the entrepreneur. Please follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcast, YouTube, and others to get the most up-to-date information as it is released.